So everyone's talking about this what happened to Etsy video. And I thought I had to have a look at it. I just wanted to do a live reaction. I haven't looked into this at all yet. So let us head over there. The very first thing I'm going to do, because there's so many comments on this, I want to look at the comments, what people are complaining about, quite rightly probably. So Etsy search flooded with cheap mass-produced. Yes, it's just an Amazon alternative. I used to sell my handmade jewelry on Etsy. I stopped due to the deluge of fake counterfeit products. Been on the platform since 2011, left. Lackluster sales, ridiculous rules, overlooking junk. Going public was the nail in the coffin. The fact they consider themselves a competitor with Amazon is a huge red flag. Exactly. They weren't a competitor, Amazon. They never wanted it to be. Josh Silverman destroyed it for sellers. Well, potentially, yes. I don't think it's entirely him, but yes. Nothing unique about Etsy. We don't need another Amazon. They shouldn't aspire to be Amazon. Drowning in their ridiculous fees. There are a lot of fees, but there are a lot for anywhere. But Etsy fees have gone up and up, and the economy is struggling. Right, let us dive into this video, shall we? And we'll see what it's all about, and what I think.
Etsy, the global e-commerce platform known for unique and handmade goods, reported its highest ever annual revenue of $2.7 billion in 2023. But that's not the full picture.
Okay, yeah, so we know the revenue and the GMS are not the same thing. The revenue is how much money Etsy has made out of all of its fees and everything else. It's Etsy's profits, where the GMS is how much we've actually sold to customers. So yes, there has been a step change in the ratio of GMS to revenue, because Etsy are making more money out of us. And GMS hasn't been growing at such a pace.
Its gross merchandise sales, or the total value of goods sold on Etsy, declined in the same period, falling flat for the second year in a row. Its stock is more than 70% lower than its 2021 high. And first quarter...
Yeah. Although what so many of these places, I don't know if this will mention it, but what so many of these places miss, and I'm not being a shill for Etsy. If you've been around here for a while, you can see how unhappy I am with a lot of Etsy things. But things look so much worse because Etsy did ridiculously well at the start of the pandemic. They pivoted fast. I've got to give them credit for that. I don't necessarily, it didn't benefit most artists. They pivoted fast to allow people to come and sell masks, which were desperately needed in places like Amazon weren't allowing them at the time. So people were able to come and get masks, but that success kind of hurt them in a couple of ways. Firstly, we had a lot of people coming in for the quick buck because they saw there was a lot of sales being made. A lot of people were seeing the number of sales, so they were putting up on each of their listings like a quantity of 1,000 for their drop shipped item, well, print on demand items, and the print on demand companies were not able to keep up with the sales, so customers weren't getting what they want. So that started the bad name for Etsy as well. But the main thing, what it did is, you're comparing this year to last year and the year before and stuff. It's tough because Etsy had such a high surge. Then you're comparing and saying, oh, it's not getting year-on-year growth now. And that's because things have dipped since the pandemic. So it was always going to look worse because it had such a viral growth. But it's also done a lot of missteps.
2024 earnings results didn't look much better.
Etsy's consolidated results, while within our guidance range, were not where we wanted them to be.
After the big increase in both buyers and spending per buyer during COVID, it looks like they've hit a wall. and you basically have a company that has not grown in 2 years.
Some longtime sellers.
Yeah. That's the sad thing. If you look at the growth over time and sort of flatten out that bump, it's grown. But also, Etsy has grown. It's grown its revenue a bit, but it's also grown the number of sellers. That has grown too much, and that is what a big problem is.
Are partly blaming CEO Josh Silverman, saying his focus on profits has pushed the company away from its vision, allowing counterfeits and mass-produced items to thrive, demoralizing artists and buyers.
Yeah, I said in Etsy News earlier this week that lots and lots of actual decent artists aren't coming to Etsy because they don't feel it's the place for them. They're hearing all of this bad news and they're feeling, yeah, this isn't the place for me. If I open my shop, they'll just take my money off me and shut me down. There's no sales on Etsy. So the people who we want on Etsy aren't coming to Etsy. And to say blaming Josh Silverman, I don't really know much about the guy. Like most companies, it's a figurehead, really. The biggest problem, which I didn't really see it was going to be as bad as it was floating on the stock market. Because what happens then is the shareholders are clamoring for growth every single year and are not looking at the long-term vision. So if you're just looking for growth at any cost, then you get the big pandemic surge. But Etsy can't keep that momentum. It can't grow like that every year because there isn't that unique thing that just happened. What you have to look at, it's like if as a seller or a creator or something of yours goes viral, what happens is you look at your normal views or your normal sales that happen all of the time. And then what can happen is you've got that viral spike and then people will go, oh yeah, I used to make 10 sales a day or something, but for the past 2 days I've had 100 sales because you went viral, somebody featured you on Instagram or something. So now you're sitting back and you're going, so I expect to have 100 sales a day forever. And that's not what happens. That is not a step growth. It's a viral spike. And what's going to happen is it's going to drop back down. And if your sales drop back down to 15 views a day, you're just going to look at that big spike and say, this is terrible, this is really bad, rather than looking that you'd gone from 10 sales a day to 15 sales a day. So your baseline had increased. You start panicking and saying you've not hit the spike. And to an extent, that's what's happened with Etsy. It had a viral spike and it's actually stayed up there. The GMS is still pretty high compared to what the baseline was before. It's not growing because economy, jobs, people are nervous. There's so much more competition. These are all understandable things, but because you've got shareholders, there's pressure to be growing all the time. And the only way to grow all the time is to do shady, spammy things. And that will result in a crash at some point.
Competing with people who are generating art via artificial intelligence now, I can't compete. It's just junk.
I find that so sad and I totally understand it. But yeah, I'm not against. I'm on the fence about AI art. I think AI is a useful tool. I don't know that we can say that Etsy should ban AI art, but let us know what's the difference. These, like I'm seeing that's AI influencer, AI art prompt, people are saying what it is. I'd like to know the difference because there are sometimes if I'm just looking for a fun background to put up for one video with no effort or something, I don't really care. I'm not bothered about how it's made. I don't want something artistic. I mean, you might just go outside, put your camera out of focus and take a picture of something to get a background, so that's not taking art away from an artist. But yes, if you want a beautiful painting for your wall, you want to know that you're getting a beautiful painting for your wall, not something that has 4 knuckles and 17 fingers and doesn't actually print out to the quality that you want, and you didn't want a digital thing. And yeah, I think artists aren't going to be that artists shouldn't be competing with the AI things. It's a different thing. If you want cheap posters for your student flat, that's absolutely fine, and they were never going to buy beautiful works of art. But at the same time, the beautiful works of art should be able to be found by the people who want to buy the real artist's work. I hope that makes sense.
A lot of it, you're just going to be a slightly more expensive Amazon. That seems like a terrible business plan.
With discretionary spending down, a first quarter 2024 miss in both merchandise sales and profits, and an acknowledgement of poor execution by its CEO, Etsy's future is uncertain.
It's a public company. Its job is to return value to shareholders.
Yeah, let's stop that being the world we're in. I hate that. Like, shareholders, companies need a bit of money sometimes to help them grow and do all the things. Shares aren't a bad thing. It's not a bad thing if the workers get shares in the company, so their hard work brings them in money. I hate the world that we're in is people who do not work, who have lots and lots of spare money, can put it into companies, and they demand their cut of the profits before the workers, before the Etsy artists. It's more important for the people who already had more money than they needed. I'm sorry, but they did. It's more important for them to be able to stockpile pots more money than it is for the people actually with their boots on the ground doing the work. We need to stop this expectation that shareholders can get super rich by being shareholders, because anyway, yeah.
At the end of the day, they need to be able to sell things that people want.
That's a good point. We're running into the intro and how much have I ranted? But yes, Etsy need to be able to sell things that people want. So yes, if people want AI art, that's fine, but give them a category for it. I don't agree that people are clearly buying the dropship things from AliExpress. I don't think people necessarily want that. Quite often they're angry when they see that's what they're getting. So there has to be a fine balance. I don't think Etsy should be a place where people come to buy everything. Amazon already exists. And you go to different sites for different things. If I've lost a cable from a camera I had, I go to Amazon or potentially eBay to buy it. I don't come to Etsy. If I'm wanting a cheap gift, I'll maybe go to Amazon. I'll get a Prime Day thing. But if I'm wanting a thoughtful gift, I should be coming to Etsy. So, and I don't shop on Etsy as much as I should, and I'm a seller and I teach people about Etsy, and I don't use it as much as I should. We're doing the history of Etsy.
When Etsy first came on the market in 2005, it was a revolutionary idea. People who loved arts and crafts finally had a place to buy those things all the time and get connected with sellers and artisans and artists who maybe they would have never encountered before.
Yeah, yes, it was exciting. It was a place for real artists, and it was also a community. Back in the day, many of us made most of our sales to other people that we met on Etsy. Like, I would buy lots of gifts from Etsy because we would be in chat with each other, and they had these chat rooms which weren't as dodgy as it sounds. Chat rooms that only a limited number of people could get into, and you'd all chat to each other, and at the same time you could go into each other's shops and post up each other's listings while you were chatting about your day and stuff. And I would always just, if I wanted to buy like a fancy soap for a friend for a gift or something, something would always come up and I go, I'm buying from that person. We also had really cool teams, like you could have a local team or team of needle felters and things. And again, we would make treasuries based on each other's items. We would share each other's items, we'd promote each other, and we'd buy from each other. So it was very different, but very cool.
Etsy's founder and then CEO Rob Kalin built the platform to empower
I've
artisans.
never seen him before.
His vision was that Etsy could
I
influence
understand.
society in a way that people would think more consciously about the products they chose.
How do you get from just doing it as more of a hobby to organizing this to the point where you can actually make a living?
The virtual storefront also enabled a new kind of revolution.
These small businesses, these local artists suddenly had the ability to connect with buyers all over the world. And
that was so cool. I mean, e-commerce was just sort of starting. You could sell on eBay, but nobody was making a business from that. So it was a great way that your gran sitting in her house knitting socks could actually make some money from the knitting socks and carry on with her little hobby.
this was huge. I mean, it was an opportunity for them to grow their brand, grow their sales.
Nicola Lean-Legault and Chiara Lore are just two of the many artists who joined Etsy to sell more of their work. Legault has been there since 2009.
Everyone that I knew was opening up a little shop because it was one of the only places that was offering this platform and template.
It was very about the sellers. They were really driving the traffic and making the site what it was and creating a community.
Transaction fees were initially low. Etsy received B Corporation status in 2012 and was one of the first companies with that certification to complete an IPO, which it did in 2015. At the time, it was valued at $1.8 billion.
Yeah, it was much more fun at the start. However, people paint it as this amazing thing. As I kind of alluded to, I was buying off of other sellers. There weren't many buyers. People didn't know about it. So everyone's like, oh, it's too saturated now. And yes, in the past couple of years, I would say saturated in the buyer to seller ratio is not positive, not in a good way. But back then, that was the case as well. Nobody was searching for anything. Literally, to get sales, you either had to be active constantly on chat, or you had to be renewing your listings all the time. SEO was just the newest listing showed up first. So people employed people whose job it was just to continually renew their items, to continually relist. And often on the forums, they weren't just complaints about low sales, and you're talking about the low listing fees, the low price, and it was low. However, quite often there was posts about people saying, my sales have no way covered my relisting fees. Yes, it was only 3.5% and 20 cents to list, and your transaction, your payment processing fee, you had to pay PayPal at the time. But people were spending a fortune multiple times a day, hitting that 20 cents to relist every item in their shop, basically. So it's not quite as rosy as you think it is, as people make it sound. I've been there since 2008. It was difficult. It was difficult from 2008 to 2010. Then it got super difficult. And from about 2014, I was getting the hang of things, and then, the rug got pulled again.
But the cracks in Etsy's foundation were already forming. Kalin stepped down as CEO in 2011 for a second time. As competition was stiffening, the next CEO made a big change in 2013, allowing artists to use outside manufacturers to produce their designs. The term handmade was getting looser.
It was and it wasn't. Again, they're saying it must be made or designed by you, the seller. They were very strict about this. And one thing, myself and my mom at the time ran a charity, and we got a friend of ours, an artist, to design a logo for us. And then we went to a manufacturer to create some pins to sell for the charity. And, we'd all done the work for everything with that, but it was so hard. We did manage to get to sell them on Etsy, but we had to get in there and really explain everything. But it's a good point. I think many of you don't know, before that point, you couldn't have your items manufactured. You couldn't do print on demand. If you were selling a t-shirt, you had to do that. At the most, obviously, you didn't necessarily make this t-shirt from scratch. Many people did. You could buy in a t-shirt, but you had to physically print onto the t-shirt and stuff. You had to have the items in your hand. So things definitely changed. I'm not going to say it's diluting what is handmade. The thing is, Etsy just has to be more clear about what is handmade. I have friends who are fantastic artists and they couldn't quite make a living. It's hard to make a living selling your one-of-a-kind pieces of artwork, but you can have a shop that people come to and drool over your $1,000 paintings, and then they can buy a print-on-demand notebook that has a print of the painting so they can own something of the artist while they save up to buy the artwork. So I don't have a problem with that kind of thing. If you're buying designs from somebody else, using a template and a print-on-demand company to design a t-shirt, not even checking to see how the prints look or anything, just making listings up, that's quite a bit different.
And in this new public arena, the company was beholden to financially focused shareholders with a laser focus on growth. Etsy's stock lost more than 70% of its value its first full year as a public company.
From the beginning, Etsy wasn't profitable. When it went public, it was deeply in the red. This wasn't uncommon for e-commerce companies. It's still not necessarily uncommon for disruptive new startups and things like
that. And that is, Etsy needed the money, clearly. That's why many people get shareholders. They need the money. Because to attract new sellers and things, you have to make it attractive to us, and they weren't charging enough and stuff. So they get the money in to build up to be a decent enough company, and that all kind of worked, apart from the fact they're beholden to the shareholders now. And it's a terrible business model, but it's the business model we've had for decades and decades and decades.
Like that. But over time, you needed to kind of change that.
Vendors, too, were unhappy for different reasons.
There's been a massive culture clash at Etsy, something that really started after the company went public. It's happening internally with employees who had been there since the beginning, had kind of seen this company as, different.
Yet another CEO was appointed in 2017. Josh Silverman made both short.
Yeah, still many of them are. That you still see some of the really old employees on Etsy, but in the past, a lot of them were sellers, really passionate about selling on Etsy. You'd see them in the forums. I mean, it used to be great advice if you wanted featured on Etsy and stuff to get the equivalent of what would be an Etsy pick. Just be active on the forums, because the Etsy staff were finding wonderful items just due to the people they were seeing and getting to know and chatting on the forums. It's nothing like that anymore.
And long-term changes, laying off 22% of Etsy's workforce that year and later pushing through transaction fee hikes and shipping fees. He also introduced a new tier-based subscription model for sellers to jumpstart their growth at a cost.
It was ultimately
but I think that's just them saying that. I don't think Etsy said that. I might be wrong. But the subscription-based model is not to jumpstart your growth. There is nothing in it that is going to guarantee you any kind of sales. It's to get money for Etsy while letting you have some ad spend, and we were promised there was going to be discounts for things that never really panned out. There's some discounts for things if you're in America, pretty much. And you can have a big banner and redesign your shop a little bit more, but it's not jump-starting growth.
Maybe too focused on keeping the sellers happy and wasn't doing enough to kind of drive buyer satisfaction. So that's what Josh tended to focus on, kind of maybe more balancing both sides of a marketplace, which is key.
By 2018, things were picking up. Sales were growing and the stock was at its highest. The turnaround was attributed to Silverman's leadership. And then the pandemic.
For the month of April.
And yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I don't like or dislike Josh, But yes, the focus on a new company when Etsy was starting out had to be to bring sellers in. If there's nothing to buy, you can't get buyers. And then it's going to, well, it had to make money, obviously, so shares. And then it's going to pivot to wanting to attract buyers. So it's not a bad thing. And that definitely worked for the first few years. But was it buyers at any cost? There's definitely been some missteps.
He sold $133 million worth of face masks. That's 12 million face masks.
The pandemic was a boon for Etsy. The number of active buyers increased by about 77%.
That's amazing.
Gross merchandise sales grew by more than 100% year over year in 2020 and more than 30% in 2021. Etsy stock price
although that's all good, I will say the problem there is there was a boom of buyers, but there was a boom of buyers who came in to buy face masks, and there was a boom of buyers who weren't able to go out to physical shops, so had no choice to buy online. So it wasn't so much real buyers. Etsy started to be heard of, and yes, it's kept some of that momentum. But for most sellers, the idea that, woohoo, we've sold so many face masks, when face masks shouldn't have been the backbone of Etsy business. It was a good thing, it made money and all the rest, but it didn't make artists money. Unless you could pivot your shop to sell face masks, which some people did. But even if you build up a following of customers who like to buy face masks, and then you tell them you want to sell to them your handmade sculptures, they're not going to be interested.
reached its all-time high that same year. It also started charging some of its sellers for advertising, bringing in additional streams of revenue.
Pandemic-related success is just that. It's
right. I was going to say, no, Etsy ads had been going on for a very long time. I think they mean the off-site ads, because Etsy ads have been a thing forever. Like way back in the beginning, people used to boast, it's like, I've made this many sales and I haven't used a single ad. And back before Josh, Etsy ads were a fantastic thing. Like we were shooting ourselves in the foot by proudly bragging that we hadn't used ads. Because when I figured out and turned on ads back in the day, you were getting a 10-time return. For every dollar I spent on advertising, I was getting $10 back in sales. They were fantastic. Should have started using them a long time ago. Unfortunately, that's changed. But I'm sure they're talking about, they started charging us for off-site ads. Etsy had been paying for off-site ads on our behalf as part of their marketing. And then they started to try and recoup some of that back. That annoyed people, obviously.
It's a fluke. It's a flash in the pan.
So far, missed earnings in 2023 and the first quarter of 2024 are leaving investors with little doubt that the pandemic may have been just that, a fluke. In December 2023, the company laid off 11% of its staff. But as Etsy focuses on a comeback, it's also angering some of its biggest stakeholders, its sellers.
Etsy has been changing how buyers interact with the platform to prioritize buyers buying more faster and staying on Etsy, not prioritizing buyers having a good experience from individual sellers.
Chiara Laura leads the Indie Sellers Guild, a labor advocacy group for Etsy sellers formed after a week-long strike against the platform. Creators were frustrated by
the Etsy strike. Yeah, that was... Look, I'm not against people complaining and things. I think this was... I'm not having a go at anybody. They were frustrated and wanted to do things. But the Etsy strike was sort of the beginning of the end of the good buyer feeling about Etsy. This is a problem. Like, we absolutely should complain. I'm literally complaining just now. But all of this media attention is leaving buyers with a bad taste in Etsy mouth. They're thinking Etsy's not the place for them to come to. So us sellers are getting less of the good quality buyers as well. I don't know what the answer is, but we also have to be careful about how we're doing the media. We need to find a way, or a different platform, but there isn't one just now. We need to be able to find a way to tell buyers come here and find us. Here's how you find the good people. I'm not sure. I'm having thinkings about things that potentially I or we could do, but we need to show sellers that, like, yes, there's some bad stuff. We can't help that, and that's not our fault, but come to us. I will say, over the past few years, the quality of the buyers, there's still many, many wonderful ones, but you're definitely getting a few dodgy ones in. And they've got really horrible expectations and are rude and will absolutely hold buyers. Like, they've learnt that sellers need good reviews. Like, I got my first bad review from a customer who hadn't read anything and hadn't bothered to see I was in Scotland and stuff. So I got a bad review, and my sales completely, I've not had a sale since that review. So yeah, thank you for that.
By yet another transaction fee increase and a controversial star seller program that prioritized sellers who meet requirements, like fast shipping, high ratings, and quick response times.
And everything seems very corporatized. It's almost as though you're penalized for not using Etsy the way they're trying to make you use it.
Yes, and not just that. You're penalized for not using Etsy the way they want you to use it, but things like, the shipping labels and tracking and things like that, they were penalizing people when not all sellers could use those systems. It was very US based, which, yes, you'll say it's a US company or whatever, but 50% of sellers aren't in the US. So penalizing people when you haven't put the systems in place for them to use the things. Oh, yeah.
Don't shut down my shop without letting me talk to a person. Don't issue a refund to a buyer without getting proof that it was damaged.
Yeah. That's got even worse. I ranted about that in my Etsy news on Saturday. But yes, the automatically refunding the customer, and I'm sure that looks like a handmade corset that is probably going to be more than the $250. So that means it's not eligible for the purchase protection program. Not eligible for the purchase protection program means the customer will still get refunded for any little quibble they make, but it comes out of the seller's pocket. So even if the buyer is lying, Etsy will take the money from the seller. And I didn't want to be I'm being ranty.
It's not drop your fees by half. It's not get rid of offsite ads. It's let me opt out if it doesn't work for me. Kind of all those things accumulating to where they find themselves keeping less and less of the money from when they have a sale, but having to do more and more work.
I don't know the seller, but if she's a corset maker and stuff, we have almost got to the point now. When Josh Silverman started on Etsy, he said there was a blog article from him, something along the lines of, you want to move from couches to cushions. He wanted to focus on selling the large ticket, high quality, expensive items on Etsy. So people would come to Etsy to buy couches, not just the cushions to put on the couches. But now to be 100% honest, with the purchase protection program, I will 100% say anyone who is making big ticket items, like that looks like a wedding dress, a corseted wedding dress, I am afraid Etsy is probably not the place for you, and it should be. But if you're selling, I don't know how much that dress costs, but if it's a wedding dress, it could be thousands. You will be working with your customer for weeks and weeks and months, probably. Ship that out to the customer. If they lie about a single thing, if they open a case and have any kind of niggle, Etsy will refund them from your money. So if you are selling things way over the $250, Etsy is not the place for you. And I'm really annoyed to say that, because would I prefer this kind of stuff on Etsy compared to someone's bought a few designs off Creative Fabrica and put them somewhere on a t-shirt and have a print-on-demand company creating it, and it took them 2.5 minutes.
Work, not even in their craft of the thing that they make, but just to make their Etsy shop work for them.
The company has said it had to make some tough changes to compete with giants like Amazon, which spends more on marketing and has more repeat buyers. Its deteriorating reputation is another issue the company is fighting.
Yes, it's the reputation. Look, Etsy isn't Amazon. Amazon has a very different business model. And who buys on Amazon Handmade? How many of you knew Amazon Handmade was a thing? If you were a seller, you possibly did. How many buyers know about Amazon Handmade? How many buyers come to Amazon for handmade things? Amazon tried to compete with Etsy and have kind of failed. So why should Etsy, with its unique selling point that was working, try and compete with Amazon? When we know Amazon sort of have the business practices of Temu. Amazon came in and undercut everybody, sold things super, super cheap so that they would get these return customers, and the other companies were pushed out because they didn't have the amount of money to take the hits that Amazon was taking. You can't outcompete Amazon on being cheap. I mean, Amazon have their own print-on-demand type thing. Amazon have their own quick warehousing. Don't try and compete with them. Yeah. And right. Okay. This screen where I've stopped here, this popular now is a black shirt with custom text. No. I hate things like this. Yes, if you are custom designing things that are really good, like a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago now, I made the video about Daniel Inskeep's shop where he was custom doing, like, combining graphics of people's pets and things to make a t-shirt. Absolutely. But you tell me the words you want me to put on the shirt? No, custom, like, buyers, you can go to Amazon and get that. You can go to any of the print-on-demand companies and just get it direct. Don't. No. And I'm sure the United States Postal Service, bet you that's copyright. Tortured Poets Department, I don't know what that is. Front your design, back your design. There's that custom text one again. Repeated. I don't know if it's the same shop. I'm pretty sure. Well, it's definitely the same mock-up. Custom text and your logo here. Now, I know that's a curated, that's a picked out screenshot, but it was an interesting place to stop, wasn't it?
Fighting. Sellers have blamed the 2013 rule change allowing creators to outsource their production for what they call the junkification of Etsy. This isn't a new problem, but one that some say has gotten worse as the number of sellers grows.
I want to show you the sadness on Etsy and what it's become.
Legault went viral for her TikTok exposing many of the top Etsy shops as dropshippers, or sellers who make the designs but outsource the labor to another company. Some designs are made with AI-generated images. Dropshippers are able to mass-produce items like t-shirts, stickers, and stationery. Others just sell supplies like beads.
These are not necessarily terrible things. Firstly, supply shops are totally allowed. I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. It looks like someone there has curated some really cool beats and stuff. And as Etsy is a worldwide platform, you know, I might be able to get beats that are really cool that you can't get in your country. So, you know, why not go out and curate some nice, cool things if they keep a stock of them and they're taking great pictures? And yeah, I don't have a problem with a supply shop. That's allowed on Etsy. One of the shops there they pulled up is one that I've looked at in the past. And yes, it might be AI generated images, but it's not lazy AI. It's still, but you know, people are looking for this. But they have curated their own certain style and built up a lot of listings. It's not a completely lazy thing. That shop they pulled up, as far as I can see, is making SVGs for other people to be able to print onto their things. And if you've used AI, it's not as easy as just saying, make me something awesome. You're doing a lot of backwards and forwards and tweaking and things because the AI is not that clever yet. So I don't mind a shop that's done all that work to do the curating of things in a style that I think is pretty cool. I don't actually have a problem with that.
In a comment to CNBC, Etsy said that it recognizes its current definition of handmade includes a broad spectrum of items and will clarify its policies to be more transparent about what belongs on Etsy in the coming months.
There are some like old school people in there, very few, but every click I was like, what?
That's not true. A lot of the old school people are still there. The problem is high volume sellers float to the top of the search pages on Etsy. This is what the problem is. Now, they're high volume sellers because they can make things quick and easy, and buyers can buy them quick and easy. They're cheap, quick and easy. So some buyers are wanting these things. So it's not a bad thing. There's just something wrong with the algorithm or how Etsy shows things, that there's a lot of us who've been around for quite a while. There's a lot of smaller shops who are doing well, but the thing is, now we have an expectation of 5,000 sales a day. That's not a shop doing well. That's crazy 0.1 percenters. If you're complaining about Etsy not being what it was, we should be wanting the crafters who make one sale a day, but one sale a day of a really cool thing that makes a good amount of money and has some super happy customers. That's what we should be aiming for. But you're not going to see them on the front page of search, but they still might be plodding along doing pretty well. It is getting harder though if the front page of every search is flooded with many, many high sales.
Is it cups again, cups, and then another, I click again, it's cups again. And I'm just like, how is this possible? I get that it's business, but it's so not how I want to do business.
Though this comes at odds with the company's mission, it is not necessarily bad for its finances.
If people are buying it, then there's not a lot of incentive for management to change that because it's working. Apparently.
That's a complaint I hear all the time. However, if you listen to the financial reports, the thing is, it's not working. It's not working now. It's not a sustainable growth policy because we're not seeing sustainable growth. So Etsy's realized that, and hopefully, my hopes aren't huge, but they're a little bit. Hopefully Etsy's going to realize. But yes, if it was making all the money, doing all the growth, being fantastic, then yes, Etsy wouldn't do much about it. If it's what sellers are wanting, it's making the money, shareholders are happy. At the end of the day, Etsy cared about sellers to start with to get them in. Etsy doesn't have to care about sellers, just so long as it's got enough that are selling enough to make Etsy money. However, things aren't doing so good now, and customers are having a bad experience and a bad thought with Etsy. So Etsy does have to pivot what it's doing, and it's talking the right talk just now.
But of course, you are going to risk alienating the people who started with the platform.
I think we do pay attention when sellers object to some of the policy or pricing changes, but I don't think it's had any impact on their business.
Etsy said it removed 115% more listings for violating company policy in the first quarter 2024 than the year prior.
We've always taken down items for not complying with not handmade. That's always been a focus, but we've been getting better technology and investing a lot in that.
Okay.
As Etsy tries to compete with
this is kind of interesting. I was just thinking about stopping watching this because they're not. This has been everyone's saying, have you seen this? This is amazing. Got to look at this. It's not really saying anything that we didn't know. I don't want to be just bashing Etsy. There is absolutely problems with Etsy, but also Etsy has acknowledged that. I don't know if I'm going to like how they're going to address the acknowledgement. But yeah, there's sort of nothing new in there. There's some nice shops. I loved seeing that corset shop. Great work. And sadly, yes, I don't think Etsy is the place for you just now. So Etsy, if you're watching this, if you're pivoting things, pivot them to make it safer for sellers who are selling things like that. They should be on Etsy. That is handmade. I don't think fighting and saying, oh, print on demand isn't handmade, like that ship's sailed. That's too late to take that out. However, I'd like to be able to find non-print on demand stuff. I don't think it's a bad thing to separate things out.
E-commerce giants like eBay or Amazon, the path for being both successful and loyal to its core principles is unclear.
Can you be Etsy while also having the pressures of a public company? Should it have gone public? I mean, it depends on who you ask.
Etsy,
that's a big question. Should Etsy have gone public? I know a lot of people were worried, and I didn't think it would be as bad as it was, but I was wrong. Should it have gone? Well, as they're saying, Etsy wasn't profitable until it went public, so maybe it had to, else it wasn't a sustainable business. But that does make things super difficult, because then you're at the whims of these rich people who want to get richer. I mean, I know I'm a 0.5% of a shareholder in Etsy, but that's nothing compared to the people who take out enough shares to be on the board. That annoys me. People are on the board of Etsy just because they have enough money. No.
CEO says the company is still trying to engage and retain current buyers, half of whom only shop on Etsy once per year. The 7 million artists are what the company was founded on, and without them, Etsy is perhaps no longer Etsy, or offers what buyers are looking for anymore.
Many sellers feel trapped. They're not really making enough profit margin on Etsy anymore. But because Etsy's still there, it's very hard for alternatives to grow, right? So they've kind of really taken over this space and then shifted and are now like still sitting in that space.
In February 2020,
I agree there. We are trapped because there is no alternative just now. Myself and my friend Stala and a lot of people are looking at alternatives, not even to say, bye-bye Etsy, we hate you. I'm not going to do that. I'm still hopeful for Etsy, but we do need alternatives. It's not good to have all your eggs in one basket, but there are no other baskets. Like, you can tell me about, like, people will put in the comments other sites and things. They are so tiny. They are tinier than the beginning of Etsy. Like, no one's heard of them. So unless we can come together as a community and grow some of these other sites, it's not going to happen. I mean, something's going to give. Either Etsy will get better or some other sites will come up and take its place. But I can't tell you just now what those sites are going to be, because there has been tons of sites trying to come up and topple Etsy, and most of them didn't even last a couple of years. The ones that are still around are still tiny. Nobody's heard of them.
2024, activist investor Elliott Management built a 13% stake in the company, the largest of any investor, earning it a board seat. Stocks shot up more than 10% on the news.
We haven't really seen a ton yet as far as what the impact will be from that, but just
how's that going to be a good impact? That's someone who likes to grow businesses. We kind of don't want Etsy as a business growing. We want it as a business growing, but not growing as a business. We want it to have a more long-term prospect, more long-term idea, which could mean that there won't be growth and growth and growth for a little while as that trust's got to be built back, that finding its feet again has to be built back. The really good thing is a lot of people have heard about Etsy. The really bad thing is they're continuing to hear bad things about Etsy. So the brand's out there, but the brand's a little tarnished. Now, we need people who are wanting to make the brand pretty again. Someone who had a lot of money to come into companies just because they've got a lot of money, or it's a company that comes in and tries to make a difference. Like, no, why aren't people being brought into companies because they've got qualifications that can help? Why are people coming into companies because they've got enough money? Like, in my head, I'm just going, like, Twitter, love or hate Elon Musk, Twitter was taken over not by someone who knew what they were going to be doing or whatever else, just by someone who had enough money. Grr.
Generally, public market investors generally do applaud activists being involved because it perhaps is an outside opinion kind of coming into a room. I actually think the most likely case is Etsy will find a way to use that AI to help their sellers. And then perhaps it'll be a way to kind of build up trust, which is like, let us set the price.
I think what also they're missing is that we are not into having these third parties. Like, I want to work directly with my printer. I want to work with other artists. I want to collaborate. I want to do these things in the way that makes me feel human.
Ultimately, some major changes could shake up the company if it can't boost profits or innovate fast enough. In February 2024, it introduced a one-time seller fee of $15 for new shops, which it said helped boost revenue in its Q1.
Yeah. How do we boost revenue, take more money off of sellers who are making less money? And that is so annoying. I would like for companies like Etsy not to be able to increase their take from sellers when GMS is falling or flat. Because basing their revenue on taking money off of sellers is unethical. Like, their growth on not selling more things. Etsy's revenue should increase because it's making more better sales. It shouldn't increase because it's taking more money. Now, I know that $15 is supposed to slow down new sellers coming, but the problem is, as I've already said at the start, sellers who should be on Etsy are not wanting to sign up to Etsy. It's the sellers who shouldn't be on Etsy that are joining up in droves. And yeah, as Josh said, he said, like, that $15 shouldn't be a barrier to entry for people who are really serious about starting a business. And I kind of agreed with him at the time, but I'm also thinking, like, when I started on Etsy, when many people started on Etsy, we did not have much money at all. $15, especially $15 when you're hearing the horror stories that your shop will instantly be shut down for no reason. Josh, that might not be a lot of money to you, but if somebody is looking at a side hustle and they're making art, they're actually physically making art, and they've put in, like, say, a jewelry maker, they've bought all their silver and their supplies and their welding equipment and everything, they might not have a whole lot left. So again, you're probably putting off the people that know they're going to be 2-3 years without making many sales anyway, the way it goes. You're not going to be putting off the people who are going to open a shop, sell a bunch of illegal copyright stuff, probably not even ship it, get themselves shut down in a few months. You know, they don't care. The $15 when they're going to make millions because your algorithm favors the scammy
results.
Ultimately, you know, the outlook for the company is 5-6%, 7% revenue growth and not 13% revenue growth, they probably would restructure their expenses. Could they shrink the size of the organization, have more layoffs, increase the margin? I mean, generally scaled marketplaces can operate at margins higher than Etsy is operating at today.
Okay. I was asked to watch that, and I watched that. Let me know what you'll think. I don't think we really got much different from that at all. I got it rant. But what happened to Etsy? There were some pretty visuals. I like to meet some of the shop owners there. But there's nothing new there. Etsy's in trouble. It needs to make changes. I strongly think it needs to make changes in favour of bringing on real artists and crafters. And that is not going to result in 11% growth. It's not going to result in 5% growth. So, that's just the way it is. It's going to be hard if they want to do the good thing. Let me know what you think. My thoughts are Etsy is going to have to divide things up a good bit and give people are going to be able to say how, Josh mentioned this, how handmade things are. So I made this in my own house from my own hands out of materials that I sourced in my local community kind of thing. And then when people search, they're going to be able to say, oh, I want a quick AI produced print-on-demand t-shirt. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm probably wearing something like that just now because sometimes that's what you want. And at other times, if I'm buying a t-shirt for me, I probably don't want to spend $100 on it. If I'm buying just a quick thing to go and walk down the river in, if I'm buying a gift for somebody else, I would probably like to buy a screen printed t-shirt from somebody sitting in the hills of a beautiful place with a story that I can attach to that gift as well. So, do you know what? I've ranted for nearly an hour. If you're still here, you obviously need to like this video, and you probably should subscribe to me because you're a very special person who likes my type of content. Let me know what you think, and I'll leave it at that.